Are you ready for Sandcake Patrick?
Yeah.
Are you ready for Sandcake Patrick? Yeah. Put your hands together and start clapping. Make the noise and raise the room. Come on, on the stage. Sandcake Patrick!
Oh, how's everybody doing? Fantastic. Much less hungover than yesterday. Which should bode well for you guys, I think. So, as you can probably tell, I'm not Australian. I'm from America. I take it there are some other Americans in the crowd? Alright. Yeah, I moved over here about a year ago. And I've noticed some things since I've been here. And it's interesting moving to Australia because Australia is kind of descended from the same parent as the United States. We both descended from England, from the United Kingdom. And we took very different paths to where we are now. The US, if you think about it as a scenario of the US and Australia as being children of the British Crown, the US was kind of the unruly brat of the family. You know? As soon as the parents were like, oh, we need you to start doing some chores around the house. Fuck you, Mom and Dad! Fucking out of here! This is bullshit! And it worked. We ran away. And you know, we became pretty successful. And, you know, we kind of almost by luck, really. I mean, the US became successful by not being in Europe during the 2 world wars, pretty much. That helped us out a lot. So, after that, I feel like the US just never really matured. So then, after that, you know, we're just kind of, you know, doing whatever we want, essentially. Like, pretty spoiled. I mean, starting wars, clinging to religion and guns and the imperial system, which doesn't even make sense. But England dropped the imperial system. They created it. And yeah, so that maturity, just kind of immaturity, kind of carried on. I mean, we eat whatever we want. We're fat, disgusting. We're not very good with money. Kind of have an unlimited spending credit card from the Chinese that we're maxing out all the time. But then, on the contrary, Australia would have kind of been the quiet kid of the family. Like, not really taking that much initiative at all. Kind of just sitting in his room. And then the parents are kind of like, you guys could decide who you're friends with. You don't have to ask permission all the time. You guys can make your own friends if you want to take some initiative. And Australia's just like, oh, we love you, Mom and Dad. We still have our I love Mom and Dad t-shirt on. That's a reference to the Union Jack being in the Australian flag. By the way, it's essentially the flag of England, just or the Great Britain, just with the Southern Cross on it. That's all it is. It's the same thing. And I picture it sort of like Australia is kind of the 35-year-old kid still on the couch, and the parents are just like, I don't know where we went wrong. Maybe we didn't push him hard enough. And that's all based on truth. Australia did not adopt a constitution until 1901. That's over 100 years later than the United States. And it didn't even proclaim independence. So I kind of am interested to read what that Constitution said. You know, because the U.S. one's all like, oh, the people of the U.S. can decide this, and it's a democracy, and it's the people and their will. And then was the Australian one just kind of like, oh, the Australian people will decide what we want to do, and then we will kindly ask the British if that's okay. And as long as they don't have a problem with it, that's what we'll do. But if they do, we'll just go get stuffed because, you know, they rule. The statute, and this is kind of the apathy being demonstrated here. The Statute of Westminster was passed in 1926, which essentially made it so that all the different Commonwealth countries within the British Empire could become somewhat autonomous, and Australia didn't ratify it until 1946. Like, they essentially were like, oh, you guys can be independent. Oh, no, that's okay. It wasn't until World War II that you guys were actually thinking, wow, we should probably be able to make our own decisions. That was close. And then the biggest step towards independence, where you finally are able to make your own laws in Australia without asking the British, was in 1986 with the Australia Act. I was alive. That's ridiculous. And we have something else in common, Australia and the US, decimating our indigenous cultures. Pretty good at that. And can we just, look, Aborigines aren't Australians. And Native Americans are not Americans. And before you get upset, let me finish the joke, okay? So, essentially, if you think of that as another scenario, you would have the Aborigines living in a house, and then you would have the Australians just bust in uninvited, murder, rape, pillage most of the family, take the few survivors, lock them in a closet, leave them in there for a while, redecorate the house, let years go by, and then all of a sudden be like, hey, guys, sorry about all that, but we have some exciting news. We set up a few spots at the table and we want you to join the family. So are we cool? And it's like, no, we are not cool. Like, why would an Aborigine want to be associated with the people that just completely decimated their homeland? But what are we supposed to do? Give the house back? It's a really nice house. And we redecorate it. There is a phrase here that I really, really like. And I don't know, how many people here know what this show's title? That makes one person in the whole room that I forgot. No. Yeah, so I love the phrase Straya. I think that is so awesome. Mostly because it reminds me of the phrase Murika, fuck yeah, that I got well acquainted with when I lived in the US. And I'm so glad that I was able to move somewhere that just had a phrase that people could say loudly in the street that just proudly displayed a lack of culture. It's so good. And there are people that use it non-ironically, which is kind of depressing, and that's true for both the US and Australia. But then the thing I really like about it is in sort of the more educated groups, you use it ironically. So, you know, for Murika, fuck yeah, we would kind of say that if you're in Walmart and there's someone in one of those scooters and they're buying fireworks and they have a like, these colors don't run USA t-shirt that's faded and the colors are kind of running. And, you know, reading the Bible probably at the same time. And you just look at them and you're like, oh, Murika, fuck yeah. Land of the free. That's it, land of the free. Holy crap. I'm inclined to believe that after dealing with the cost of living of Australia for a year. Holy shit. I never in my life thought that I would find New York City prices to be reasonable. Like that was like the epitome of a place that was too expensive for me before. Now I go there, and I'm like, oh, these are great prices. I can get wasted. I'm not even going to have to pay an entire week's income on one night. Fuck you, Melbourne. Here's another thing. I feel like the rules here they're a lot more lenient, like in terms of law enforcement. If you go out this door and you read, there's a sign just in the other room, and the sign says, first part of the sign says, it is illegal to drink on the streets in the city of Yarra. And then it says, below that, if you are caught with an open container of alcohol by a law enforcement officer, you may be asked to discard it. Then it says, failure to discard of the beverage may result in a fine. Like, that's ridiculous. There is no reason not to drink on the streets of Yarra. Because the worst thing that's going to happen is a cop's going to come up and say, oh, you should probably pour that out, mate. Oh, cheers, I had no idea. Guess you can't find me now, and even if I didn't do that, you might still now. And I am not a very good example of an American in terms of stereotypes. Yeah. I'm not fat, I'm not Southern, I'm well educated, I'm well traveled, I'm an atheist, I don't watch a lot of reality TV, which, oh god, reality TV, it just annoys me so much.
Whoa.
Yeah, nice. It's just the same idea rehashed over and over again. And there's three shows about people in the south of the US selling weird shit in strange ways. Storage Wars, Pawn Stars, and Auction Kings, right? I think I got that right. The three shows, all on that same subject, which I guess, it's par for the course for the South. They have a history of selling weird shit. They used to sell people. So yeah, I mean, people, it's kind of a letdown when they have this stereotype of Americans and then they meet me and they're like, oh, what am I gonna make fun of? It doesn't live up to any of the stereotypes. And you know what else doesn't live up to the stereotype? Melbourne. Because I came here with kind of a Crocodile Dundee Steve Irwin expectation. People that were very friendly and outgoing and rugged. And you walk down the street and they're just like, good day, mate. And you're like, yeah, that's cool, that guy's super friendly. And, dressed all weird, looks like they can handle anything. And they're super crazy and they can wrestle crocodiles to death. But they still seem friendly, so you're like, oh, we can be friends. This guy can kill anything that's going to try to attack me. But guess what? Melbourne's nothing like that. It's a bunch of pretentious douchebags. I don't even understand how that much pretense can exist in a place outside of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. There's probably a few people that get that, and some that have never been to Williamsburg. And it annoys me. But you guys remember that scene in Crocodile Dundee, right? Where he's like, that's not a knife, mate, this is a knife. Right? You remember that? That was the sound of him pulling the knife out. I think it would make a noise like. The closest thing you will see to that scene in Melbourne is a couple pretentious dickheads arguing about style on the street corner of Melbourne. and being like, mate, that's not a scarf. This is a scarf. It complements my whole ensemble. Which actually aggravates me, all the scarves here, because it's not that cold. I'm somewhat insulted having moved here from an area where we had to wear scarves, because otherwise you get frostbite on the neck. Here it's like 12 degrees and everyone's like, oh, the apocalypse is coming. Which brings me to the thing that makes me most terrified of Australia. And some of you may know what this is. You've probably heard of them. They're called drop bears. And let me explain to you why exactly drop bears make me completely terrified of Australia. Saltwater crocodiles can grow to be 10 meters long. That's 33 feet for anyone who's used to the imperial system. You're welcome. I had a feeling some of you were having issues. Do you know what 12 degrees is? Do you need me to do that as well? It's about 50 degrees. They spin their prey in a death roll, which involves drowning the prey while simultaneously tearing its flesh from its body. The funnel web spider can force its fangs through leather jackets and boots. It can bite multiple times and often leaves its fangs in your flesh and has to be removed by hand. Since when have boots not protected you from spider bites? That's terrifying. What are you supposed to do about this spider? What can you wear? You have to wear like steel toes? Shit. And there's a snake here called the common death adder. That's ridiculous. I mean, I wonder how it got that name. It's probably really friendly. And I think that also may be a nickname for people that work in the accounting department of a mortuary. But a few people sinking in? No. Bull sharks, tiger sharks, great white sharks. All native here. All very deadly. In addition to this, all three of these things are deadly before you turn them into sharks as well. Bulls, tigers, and great whites. All deadly. And some of you are like, oh wait, what's great white? Why are they deadly? Yeah, why don't you ask the Aborigines, Native Americans, Incans, Mayans, or the entire continent of Africa? The great whites are probably the most deadly thing on that list. And now they're fucking sharks too. Never going swimming again. The golden orb spider has been known to eat birds. There's a spider here that preys on birds. That's significantly bigger than a fly, which is what I'm used to spiders eating. The cassowary, which is a bird, is the closest thing to a velociraptor left on the planet. I'm pretty sure that that's what the velociraptors turned into. It is the cassowary. Big claws, ugh. And this is actually my favorite. There is a fucking snail here that will kill you. The marble cone snail injects poison using a tube-like harpoon that's strong enough to pierce a toenail. What? Like, since when has it not been safe to just go walking on the beach? It's a fucking snail. And now you're just walking on the beach, harpoon through the toenail. Oh, I'm fucking dying. And I was reading, it's okay, so not a lot of people die from these things, but people like pick them up and put them in their pocket because they like the shells. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, what the fuck is that? There's no way it could be that innocent looking snail I picked up. And so here's why drop bears make me terrified of Australia. Because you guys had that as real fucking animals. to come up with something to scare tourists. You had that to use as inspiration. And the best you could do is an unkempt koala that's like angry and has slightly larger claws. They're not even that scary. It's a fucking koala. It's just an angry koala. And it's a stupid name. A drop bear, that's just kind of like a description of what it does. It drops on people. Oh, let's call it a drop bear. And not only is that name stupid, but because the drop bear is essentially derived from a koala, I would assume it's also a marsupial, which would make it not a bear. So, if you're going to come up with shitty imaginary names, can we at least have, or shitty imaginary animals, can we at least have the names be scientifically correct? Shouldn't it be like a drop koala or a dropawalla or something like that? Or some aboriginal name that's threatening, like a bunyip or something? I mean, why didn't you guys go with a bunyip? They're pretty scary. Maybe a few people that know what that is. I looked it up on Wikipedia. And that just kind of segues into the fact that, personally, I think Australians are really bad at naming things. There's a beach that annoys me to no end on the Mornington Peninsula. Some of the beaches have decent names, like Brighton Beach, or Elwood, or Rosebud. They're named after areas that they're close to. That's fine, cool. Then there's a beach that really throws you, right? It's called Safety Beach. That is the worst name for a beach I have ever heard in my whole life. But the good news is, Safety Beach has had a history of shitty names, which makes this joke even better. Safety Beach was renamed Safety Beach. Do you know what it used to be called? Does anybody? Nobody likes history of places. It used to be called Shark Bay. Pretty big switch on that one. So what happened was, originally, fishermen that were fishing out in Port Phillip Bay would go to Shark Bay and they would chum the water with all the leftover bait they had at the end of the day. And then all the sharks would come and eat it. And then that practice stopped. And the Mornington Peninsula became established as a tourist destination. And then people had to get together and have a meeting because there happened to be a beach that not many tourists were going to. And that one was named Shark Bay. And they were trying to figure out why tourists weren't going there. So they wanted to rename it something that would instill a sense of safety. So they named it Safety fucking Beach. Really? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that it didn't get named, oh, there's no longer sharks here, beach. Come on down, it's really safe. There's a mountain in the Grampians, or, yeah, there is a mountain in the Grampians. It's called Mount Difficult. It is not very easy to climb. There is another mountain in the Dandenongs that is called Mount Disappointment. Guess how the view is? Disappointing. And then this I'll just throw in there because Phil will probably be talking about it. He's here. I'll be like, oh, I told him that. There was a place here called Fox's Hangout. Do you know why? I know what you're thinking, but that's not right. It's because the hunters used to hang all the foxes in the trees after they caught them. Just hanging out. That's pretty good, huh? It's a good name. And then, I feel like the good news, there's hope. There's hope. Because there used to be a place here called Ayers Rock. But then people were kind of like, oh, wait, that's kind of a shitty name. So that's a really cool place, and that just sounds like it's a rock. Hey, Aborigines, what did you guys used to call it? Uluru. Holy shit, that's a good name. I bet tourists would go there. We should rename it. So maybe Australia is getting better at naming things. But I have to laugh at what it would have been like if the Aborigines weren't here. Because A, Australia wouldn't have an entire culture to decimate. And two, the names of things here would have been awful. Like, oh, what's that? It looks like a big, upright, hoppy bunny. Let's call it a big, upright, hoppy bunny. Yeah. Look at that big, teethy lizard. What should we name it? A big, teethy lizard. Nice. Best names. Ripper, mate. And yeah. So you get kind of special treatment here as someone from the U.S. People. Are you guys disagreeing? How long have you been here? Never mind. Don't answer that. No, it's people tend to translate things for you. So I went on a wine tour here, and the guy running the tour, he translated things for me because I went on it with another American friend of mine, and he could tell with his super Australian brain from our accents that we were not from Australia. And so he would say things like, oh, the next winery is about 3K down the road. Or about 1.8 miles for you Americans. And then he would say things like, that year the average temperature of the Yarra was about 25 degrees. Or about 73 degrees Fahrenheit for you Americans. Then he said something that really threw me off. He was telling us about times in his life when he switched jobs. And then he said, yeah, and then I switched jobs out of the hospitality industry in early September 2001. Or right around 9/11 for you Americans. Which, I don't know exactly if there's some big misunderstanding on how the imperial system of dates works. Because you don't actually have to bring up 9/11 at all. Not one bit. It's just like, what was he thinking? If he says early September 2001, we're going to sit here like, when is he talking about? Can he relate it to a terrorist strike? Understand what he's saying? And yeah, so if there is confusion, really, all you have to do is switch the day and the month. That's it. That's the only difference. All right, guys, you have been awesome, but that is it for me. I would recommend that all of you stick around for Aaron Monday's show, which is on right after me. It's called Factosaurus. I saw it yesterday, and it's awesome. Yes! I can hardly see you, but I assume that's you, Aaron.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Come, bikes, put your hands together, please. One more time. Patrick. Oh my God, this festival I've just got completely Brendan Burns. Now before everybody goes, this is just free comedy, okay? So you probably don't know much about it, but it's not an original idea. We're Australian, we don't have original ideas. We just steal ideas from elsewhere until